So if you find yourself doing some commercial photography, food photography, in interiors, whatever it is, there's different techniques in the post-production and workflow, of course. Usually I will be working through a RAW workflow, which we'll get to in a second. But this film is really about using the likes of layers and masking all objects at the same time. So if we kind of come back into RAW to begin with, and if I just double click on a photograph, ignore Photoshop for a minute, it's basically bringing it into the RAW environment. Now, as a rule, I will go in here and basically colorize. So in other words, what am I trying to do? Make it warmer, cooler, whichever. But realistically, I'm trying to change the exposure. I'm trying to actually bring highlights down, perhaps, that are beginning to burn out a little. I'm also going to add in probably a texture, so a sharpness to most of the image as a generalization. But there's going to be parts that I want to bring the highlight to as well and things. So just what I'd usually do here is actually going into mask, clicking onto the brush tool, and then wiping across the areas that I want to adjust as a kind of a standardization. So this is obviously bringing more like a kind of a foil reflector card to the areas of the food. In this case, I want to bring attention to. I can even go in and add a little bit more texture or sharpness to that image, because as a rule, how are we working? Are we working fast for web? Most of the work is going to web or small print. Do we really need to find the really fine print unless we're going very, very big? And what I'm saying is probably beyond the likes of 7.5 in size. Do we really need to actually make that effort? But we've got to look at how it's going to be perceived on a full screen if it was going to go to full screen on a website and so on. But here, as I said, I'd usually be working on the different areas of the photograph, giving different effects to kind of bring them lighter and darker. And this is a workflow that you'll see me use time and time and time again. And that's the whole point of a flow, is that you basically, that's what you do. So even just by pressing done now, or I could convert this into a JPEG or a TIFF image, or PNG, PSD, whatever I want to do. But I can basically finish this shot now, okay, as far as the main goal is concerned. But really what I'm looking at, if I just press done for a minute, that kind of acknowledges the changes I've made. And this is another one of those same images. It's not the same file name, I don't think. But really what we're doing here is making multiple adjustment layers, a bit like we just saw, but it's a little bit more kind of progressive if you want to work in a finer way. So there's a quick kind of solution since around about October 21, which is masking all objects at the same time. So if I just press F12, that will go to the revert to opened. You can see it's .cr2 on the top here, which means it's a raw file that hasn't been processed as far as saved to anything else yet. It's waiting for me to save it. And because as a rule we want non-destructive adjustments, that's how we just worked in the likes of RAW, we can do very, very similar here. So in other words, we can just come up into layer and we can use this option. As I said, it came in October 21, I think it was. That would be Photoshop 22. And if we kind of 2022 days, if we mask all objects, Photoshop's going to just take kind of 30 seconds plus in its AI to generate the multiple amount of masks within what it sees as an object within the photograph itself. So it's probably going to see all of the buns, all of the toppings of the buns, the sugar bowl, the racking, and so on and so on. So within here now you can see that if I just drag across the layers and I expand that more, you can see basically what we've got is the whole host of masks that have been created. But because we haven't done anything with these masks yet, it doesn't matter. If we press the Alt key and we just click on the eye on the background image, yes, you'll see that nothing is adjusted because we haven't made any adjustments yet. However, if we say that we want to work on, say, the cakes first, yes. So if I select the layer of the first bun, as it were, and I come up into the adjustments panel and I click on levels or curves, we're going to use levels today. And if I then just open up the brightness to that product, that you can see already what it's doing. So this means that I can kind of have a selective adjustment to each one of them. Let me just redock that again. But I can adjust this in any way I want. Now, obviously, if I switch that on and off, you can see the difference that I've made to that bun here. In the same way, though, I've got B, D, X, so brush, default, X to put black on top. I can actually start to mask out, because it automatically comes in with a mask, of course, when we add in an adjustment layer. So in the same way, if we look at the next bun, this one here, and I want a similar kind of effect, I can even drag the levels, pressing the Alt key, dragging that down, yes, and that gives the same effect. However, you can see that the mask has been copied at the same time. We just need to do Control and backspace to fill that with white at present, because white is our background. And at this point, of course, by double clicking into the adjustment, now I can say, well, I want you bright, but not as bright as the other areas, and so on. And this is where I would say, before you start to mask, this is where you start to copy the different, I'm just going to redock that for a minute. You can copy the levels adjustments into each one, and then you just go in and say, okay, I definitely want to do some work onto the sugar bowl. Let's click onto levels. Let's brighten it up fully. Let's hit B for brush, though. We'll select the mask, and now we'll just go in and actually paint some of the glass of the actual sugar bowl back down a little bit more. Remember, this can be a little bit crude, especially if it sees a very hard edge of something that is very blurred. So you need a kind of bit of a feathering technique to really work well. But remember, this is a kind of an alternative to what we were seeing. And you can work your way through all the different elements, including the floor and everything else, of course, and things. So if we just add in another adjustment here, and we kind of go deeper, you can see how it's adjusting all the actual wood of the desk and things, really. So just from a quick fix there. And here's another image, kind of had the same effect done. And this is basically a room interior, of course. If I press the F12 key again, puts it back to where it was. And remember, all you've got to do to initiate the mask all layers is go into layer, come down to mask all objects, and let Photoshop's AI look for the best things, and then you can actually start to work your way through darken and lighten areas within the image. But as I was saying to you, my true workflow, first of all, would be working in the likes of RAW and making those adjustments there.